Well, tell you the truth, never thought about the brain side aspect of this. But it is, what never fails to fascinate me is really the wholeness and the richness of other cultures, indigenous cultures that have been excluded. But when we were talking about enclosures, well, I think that we should imagine modernity, capitalist modernity, as one huge enclosure. When all of these knowledges were transformed to absent knowledge, right? We have to find a way, and this is the role, Iain was talking about the role of historians, and I guess we as a sociologist, the role would be to discover a sociology of emergence, sociology that will make visible, or help make visible, these kind of knowledges and these kind of approaches to knowledge. What I like a lot, and it's coming from a group of indigenous people and now also academics in the United States, surprisingly, is this idea of other worlds and knowledges otherwise, which I like because it implies both the idea of creation of other world, which is just, sustainable, based on principles of solidarity, and other knowledges, right? And encompasses all of these alternative dissenting imaginations and alternative dissenting sites where this imagination is coming from. There are many great efforts. For example, Boaventura de Sousa Santos, whom I mentioned, just published a book with Versa books about called Toward Another Knowledge. An excellent book. It's a compendium of different indigenous knowledges. They're not in competition with modern science. They're just as important as modern Eurocentric science. And I think this is, in that sense, it's really interesting. And we have to do our best, as sociologists, citizens, concerned academics, whatever, to make these absent knowledges, absent experiences more visible, to go to the common knowledge form, to move away from the Eurocentric modern knowledge form, which is an enclosing form. I mean, again, modernity is not just a great theft, it's a great enclosure that removes knowledge, that erases knowledge. And these knowledges never went away, they're here. You just need to make them visible.
I think a lot of them have been extinguished, however. I mean, I do think that there is a lot that we have lost. We're losing a tremendous amount. I mean, think of all the craft skills that have gone, some which we wish to be lost. I mean, the knowledge of how to make nuclear weapons, we could use that. Whatever. I'm not sure that also, it's not as if we live in a world, a rigorously logical world, but typically the Eurocentric attempts to kind of understand the brain and the brain of simple people as opposed to civilized people is kind of ludicrous. I do remember being taught about Luria and the Soviet psychologist who went out into the wild spaces of the new Soviet Empire in order to beef up the peasants' logic. And they would do the psychological testing of the kind that we all know from IQ tests, and these are all crammed with assumptions that privilege, class, race, the whole thing. Anyway, Luria found, his teams went out, and they found that they had all kinds of problems administering these tests. So they would go to some village and they'd ask people to take these tests, and it would be things like, okay, it's 20 miles to Omsk. You've got your horse traveling at 3 miles an hour. How long will it take you to get back to and back from Omsk? And the reply would be, you'd be mad to go to Omsk this time of year. And so on. In other words, what you begin to realize is that modern official knowledge and the kind of exams. I mean, the Western bourgeois exam. Questions to which people already know the answers. Why would we do that? Why is it also individualized, right? Why do we have to pass these things individually? Why can't we have a world in which we can pool our skills? Why must we be pitted against each other? It's a disaster that in California, I'm not sure how it is in Oregon, but that there are special techniques which guarantee wisdom and truth and accuracy. turns out that climate science is way more interesting in its, it's not, I mean, talking to climate scientists in Berkeley, there's tremendous amounts of interesting disputes within climate science. The politicians, of course, are, they're also captured by big money. I mean, there's more room for disputes in climate science simply because there are many degrees of freedom in meteorological systems and epicycles and feedback loops, which are extremely complex. So it's not obvious at the pace of change. That's for sure. The politicians are more or less trapped in trying either to deny there's a problem or to come up with a technical fix. I mean, in Copenhagen, what we're going to get is carbon trading, cap and trade. We're going to get more commodification. The common, if you like, the common of pasture, common of estovers, common of tannage, these are ancient terms that have fallen out of use because we don't know anymore what it is to hold things in common. These were not commodities, right? They could not be abstracted as commodities. The further commodification of the air, which is what carbon trading requires, is actually a disaster. The politicians think this is the way out. The scientists will say, well, we'll just tell you the facts and we're neutral on that. You have to do the politicking around this. I mean, we have to build a movement such that we feel the power and the good sense in refusing the commodification of the air. Right? There are certain moments when it becomes obvious. I was talking this morning about this famous memo. Some of you might know the Lawrence Summers memo. Before Larry Summers went to be CEO of Harvard, he was World Bank economist. And there was a leaked memo in the late 90s in which he said, according to our theory, and this was the theory of cost-benefit analysis, the third world, the global south, surely is tremendously under-polluted. Right? Well, we laugh, but it's true. On their assumptions, it's actually true. He wasn't wrong. There was a kind of honesty in this internal memo. Right? And why was that? Well, because the calculation, analogous to the calculation of the climate scientists, or rather the kind of quants and mathematical statisticians and so on who were coming up with the cap and trade modalities. I mean, it's on a cost-benefit analysis, it's cheaper, it's more efficient to pollute the bodies of southerners than it is northerners. Why? Because a cancer in a brown body in the south, which causes death, means foregone income much less. The expectable income in a lifetime, so that life is worth less than it is in the north, right? That's the logic of the International Monetary Fund. It's not a stupid conclusion, it's just an obscene and depraved set of assumptions. Interestingly, the Minister for the Environment in Brazil wrote an open letter to Larry Summers saying the idea that the global south is under-polluted, that the ecological crisis should be solved by deflecting the pollution. And that, by the way, of course, will be the result of the carbon trading, right? The obscenity of having the plants elsewhere do it. But of course, there are always people there downwind of those plants, but of course they are not they don't have the political clout of the north. The minister said, your logic is impeccable, but this is depraved, which is right. And a few weeks later, he was sacked.